everybody. Cindy Gould here from Create Your Victorious Life. Welcome back. I'm so excited to be here today, especially on this fantastic Spanglish World Network and the Her Network. We are so grateful for being on the Roku channel, Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Go ahead and download those on your respective apps. You can also find us on Chrome, and you can also use your Roku sticks, Fire Sticks, and all the various things that you do. When you're there, please leave a stellar comment and a rating for us. And we're so excited. And today, finally, I get to have my friend. I'm so excited. Steve Wright is here. He is first and foremost an outstanding salsa dancer, which I'm thrilled about. Got to see it. It was pretty amazing. Also, though, he is such a phenomenal human being. He's coming to us from the UK. He has the managers who lead, and that's more like, I think he's starting a revolution with that. So we get to hear more about that today. And, you know, he started as he's a seasoned IT manager from Lancaster in the UK, you know, but he decided, okay, well, he could see things that were needed in various industries with that middle management, with the managers, with the teams. And his goal was just to transform those teams and transform the leaders so that you get the very best out of everybody. And he does that on a global basis. He also just started a new group, which on Facebook, which will start with that today. And Steve, without further ado, thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Cindy. Yes, this has been a bit of a journey to get here, but I'm so glad I'm here. And thank you for extending the invitation. And thank you for that kind introduction. And I wondered who you're talking about for a little bit there with regards to the awesome salsa dancer. I just get the basic moves together, but it's a lot of fun. And it's a great metaphor for life and working with people. If life was more like a salsa dance, we'd have a lot more fun, I think.
Oh gosh, and it'd be way spicier, you know.
Oh yes, yeah. You shouldn't eat salsa while you dance salsa, but I get that. That could be interesting.
I mean, though, just even with the word, like, you know, when you move your body around, and it's so cool that you start with what a great metaphor, because that dance of life, you can waltz through it, you can do the hustle, you can do the Macarena, you can do whatever you want to do. For me, you can hula, right? I mean, there's a variety of things, but the salsa is just like this spicy, kind of way to do it. And I love that. I love the thought of that. So I'm going to start today, though, with a question that I ask every guest, first time guest on my show is, and let me preface it with this. Since the first time I was on camera and through the Neuroencoding Institute, which is, with our mentor and dear friend, Joseph McClendon III, or through our dear, my sissy, one of my besties, and your birthday twin, Yayoi Komiyama, yes. And with all of that, one thing that I've seen with you is you exude enormous joy. And to me, the ultimate prize of exuding that joy is victory. You're victorious in your life. So how have you created such a victorious life? Share with us.
I'm very happy to, and it's not prideful to sort of say I'm happy in my own skin. Sometimes people are not necessarily, we don't take compliments well, and when someone actually points something out in you that is complimentary, we can often excuse it away, or we diminish its power, which is actually to say that we're returning the gift that was given to us. And, we know you and I know where that gift comes from. And it's not our place to return such a wonderful gift. And, really we're called to sort of lean into those gifts that we're given. So I don't think I necessarily create joy as much as I've probably got a worldview, a faith-based worldview that allows me to look for places where joy can show up and actually enjoy where joy shows up. Again, we live in a place where we can be very pessimistic, and I'm a technical guy, so I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical by nature. and that's okay. It's good to be skeptical, but not to the point where you're cynical, or not to the point where you literally turn your back on the gifts that have been presented with you. I'm lucky to have my mum with me from Jamaica this week, and that's part of the whole rigmarole, the whole roller coaster of life right now. So I have a household of my mum and her sisters, and
Wow.
they I spending time with my mum in this way really informed me as to I can see where some of my joy came from. It was kind of imbued from my mum, and raised me as a single, she raised me as a single mum, teenage,
Mm,
and that was an interesting story and navigation. My
yeah.
my dad's always been around. It's just that she raised me primarily on her own. So I'm her only child, and that makes our bond really special. So all that to say, growing up, we had our hardships, but at the time, she always had a way to laugh things off, not to laugh in the sense of I'm ignoring what's going on, or not to laugh in the sense of I'm dismissing or diminishing someone's view, but
Right.
really just to sort of find some place where there is always an element of a different way of a different perspective on something. So whatever challenge we faced or she faced raising me, I think some of that sort of rubbed off, and we've all had our fair share of issues and challenges that show up, and we can't necessarily change the issue, but we can often change how we show up to that issue. So I choose joy as opposed to
Yeah. I love that, everything that you just said. I love the nod to your mother, and I'm thrilled that she's there.
Mm,
I want to encourage you, either record or keep a notebook, because
yeah,
having three sisters together, beyond all the laughter, I can only imagine, but having three sisters together, wow, the gold nuggets that you can
yeah.
just pick up off of the wait, and gather them. How cool is that, right? And how
I
fun.
actually I actually interviewed my mom for my podcast, so it was something that came up in a discussion, and someone said, "Oh, your mom's in town. You should interview her." And
Yeah.
I thought it was a little bit of a, well, not a dig, but someone sort of saying, "Oh, you're interviewing all these people. Why don't you interview your mum?" As if
Uh,
to say I would say no because it's not the thing to do. It's not the space to have a podcast show with your mum on it. I mean, who interviews their mum, for goodness sake?
the smart
I do.
ones. Yeah, the smart ones. I know it.
Yeah.
My mom about being here, even on this show or in the Victory Network, on in the group, and even with my children, it's like,
Mm,
okay, it's time, and what's super cool about it is, and they do have something to say, and I'm proud of that. Like,
yeah.
I want them to, and it's funny because there's other family members that I really want to have on the show as well, either siblings or, like some brothers that I have, and a
Mm.
nephew or niece, and I'm like, I just talked to my son the other day, Nicholas, and I said, you got to hurry and get on the show because I can't have them before I have you. So, like, what are we doing? Right?
No,
And it's,
it is special. It is special
it is.
because it puts you in it's a place of humility. You asked, I think your question was, how do I create sort of a joyful disposition, if that's
Oh, victorious
sort of
life.
paraphrasing what you said. And
Yeah.
I think part of that is, you've got to come from a place of humility. You can't take yourself so seriously. And we all
Right.
know that most of the times when we think people are paying attention, or we think that we're making an impact, we're probably not the impact we think we are. Therefore, let's not get hung up on that journey. It cripples us more than frees us. There's
100%.
um there you go. It's just one of those things. But I choose joy. I love it. And like I said, that's not to say that I don't have my down days, or things that frustrate me. There's things I want to see in the world. um there's things that I can't change in the world, but there's some things I can sort of speak to and have an influence over. And to that extent, I want to be able to, I want to exercise my agency. I want to exercise what I can affect in the world, in my world.
Right.
And my world is not your world, Cindy. It's not the world of somebody else. It's my perspective on the world. So whether that's my passions are, like you mentioned, the managers who lead is a Facebook group, and that phrase is really around understanding the concept of sort of management and leadership. And they're not roles in a company as much as there are sort of personas that we need to lean into and understand how we can use them to serve ourselves and others. Other passions are health. I've spent over 3,000 weeks on the planet, which for those that can work out how old that makes me, that's
Figure it
go
out.
for it. But it's a great book, by the way. I'll plug that book every day. Oliver Burkeman's 4,000 Weeks, and it's time management for mortals. And we never manage time. We show up and do our best with what we've been given.
Wow.
It's not promised to us, so let's not go around thinking we can just put it in the box and manage it like we do money or
Right.
resources. So that's important to me. Health and having a joyful disposition is one of the cornerstones of being healthy.
100%.
Can't do it without it.
100%. That's absolutely my attitude about it. That's how I feel about it. You know that. You've seen me enough. Joy is a big deal, and joy is my jam. I mean, it's like, and that doesn't mean, like you said, that I don't have, I can honestly say I don't ever have a bad day, ever. And I may have bad moments in a day. I may have bad hours in a day even. And that really boils down to me and how I want to see it. And like you, I choose joy. And to build a foundation under that joy, I choose love. I choose gratitude. My faith is the steering ship to all of it. I mean, that's at my bow. The joy of the Lord is my strength, and that's where I bring it from. And there's no way around that, for me, nor do I want there to be. I've already walked on this planet, I think, a couple weeks longer than you. And so I have to think about that.
Get the calculators out now.
Get those calculators out, people, and at the same time, it's funny because like you, I danced through my life. And you can do that and have that dance, that beautiful dance with joy. And joy and walking with joy to me is the ultimate victory. The other thing that because I know that you steer your life also, like you said, you have a faith-based worldview, is when you have that joy and you have those things and, what do you do? How do you maintain your joy when your world blows up, when your day blows up? Like, what do you do?
First thing is that you press pause. You press pause. People always say, well, I don't know if people always say it, but I've heard it often said, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging.
Ooh, that's good.
And so that's great. So when your metaphorical world blows up, and I've been recently very sensitive to the language of war and destruction and fighting. We use a lot of words in triggers and targets and things blowing up and dropping truth bombs. And I'm thinking, oh, we can maybe find a better way with the world so much in turmoil, using terms that denote destruction when people are physically in spaces where they are being bombed. For me to say I'm dropping a truth bomb is almost disrespectful. It kind of triggers me a little bit. Triggers, there you go. Triggers me a little bit.
There you go.
Yes, yes.
All of our language.
Our language, yes. I think so. So to answer your question, the first thing is to pause, stop digging, put the shovel down and look around the hole. And that you find yourself in, the predicament that you find yourself in. I also, I'm a fan of the Stoics, the Stoic philosophers, and that informs a worldview that says, look at it for what it is, and not what you think it is or what you hope it is, but try and get a sense of reality. The hole you find yourself in may not be as deep as you think. It may just be a ditch. It may have an escape route. It may actually have stairs coming out of the hole. It may be an opportunity for you to call out to someone to throw you a rope that you need in your life to help you. It may be a hole of your own choice, your own design, and you thought it was good to be in a hole because it protects you. But in actual fact, being in a ditch or being in a high place can be difficult to protect. You think you're surrounded by, a bunker is a metaphor for keeping you safe, and a castle on a hill is a metaphor for keeping you, safe in terms of seeing your enemies come up the hill. But at the same time, those are places where you can be easily compromised. You can you can lay siege to a castle and prevent people from coming up there, and you'll starve. Or you can put a lid on the bunker and never come out. So don't always think that where you are is necessarily to your betterment. So pause, take a reality check. And then in the pausing and in the reality, that's when you make the choice. If you're making a choice from those positions, then your choice is informed by your history, your faith, your hope, and you're in a better place to make choices that will potentially help you in your current predicament. You got to know what you want. We know Joseph talks a lot about that, Joseph McClendon. And that's the first question you ask, is like, what do you want? And if you've got specificity about that question, based on the reality that you find yourself in, and the fact that you've stopped long enough to really look at the question. You can't be asking the question while you're still digging the hole. Can't fix a bike while you ride it. You got to get off it and
no kidding, right? Well,
I've tried it and I've fallen off the bike, which is
that's great. Well, you know what I love? I love, and when you can't believe everything you think. That's for sure.
That's
right.
true.
And so when you're in that ditch, this is the vision I saw as you were talking. You're in this ditch, you're in this, even like an irrigation ditch. And if you just stay there, what are you going to do when it starts filling up with water? What are you going to do when all these things are happening? So I love that. The power of the pause, quit digging down is just going to bring your water up. I mean, again, these are the things that are going in my head. Something too, that you said too, I love what you addressed about the words that we use, and because words are creative containers of energy. And it's interesting because when I listen to what I say when your world blows up. And so instead of using that term, now I'm thinking into that, because it's like, okay, so how do you maintain your joy when you have fill in the blank? Like I was thinking plot twist, because I use plot twist a lot. So when you have a crazy plot twist or something, it's something that has the same connotation or similar vision. But then now I'm thinking into, do I want people to have that vision? Because there are people in the world right now that is the reality. I have a friend who is no longer here anymore. And I remember him telling me they were one of the first Christian families. His father, I think, was a Christian pastor in Lebanon. And it was really dangerous anyway there. And then when you add that to it, then there was even more. And he told me, even as a 12-year-old boy, and I shared this one time on another interview, that they slept with backpacks and slept with their tennis shoes on. And they were just, the minute you hear a noise, and a loud, an explosion or something. And I thought, holy cow, can you imagine their nervous system and their belief systems and just the amount of things that are triggered potentially in their lives. And it brings me back to what we're talking about, even about in those situations, you even think of like Viktor Frankl or different people that have been in horrendous situations and the way that they still sustained the things that you and I know, think, feel, do, and have. They still sustain these things. What about you? Has there been situations in your life ever that you thought,
Yeah, and when you said, it's interesting, we said, when your world fill in the blank, and I think when your world changes beyond what you recognize, when your world, like you said, hands you a plot twist, and that's a much nicer connotation of a challenge than blowing up. People go 3 hours without a meal and they go, I'm starving. And I go, please.
Right.
That's really not the definition of starving, not even anywhere close. So yeah, our language does, I'm going to use activate as opposed to trigger, because that's really what's happening on a sort of neuroscience level. Something is being activated.
Sure.
And whether we want it to be activated or not, then that's the question. But just trying to get away from it, give it a new language around the word, the T word. But to answer your question, I've gone through stuff. Yeah, I've had challenges. I mean, one which is an interesting one that my daughter picked up, in a discussion that we had. I've got two daughters, and they're adults now, 20, 22, 27. And I had moved our family from the UK to the US, actually working with Joseph. Joseph was my sponsor.
Wow.
Working with the Anthony Robbins organization in the UK, and actually had opportunity to work with Tony and the team in the US, in San Diego. All that to say, I'd moved my family across continents by choice. It's not a refugee asylum type scenario. So this is me choosing to move my family from one first world country to another first world country, under my own steam. But at the same time, there's a different dynamic in your family that happens when you move everybody and displace them. So I felt a pressure because I was displacing my family and changing what they know. So that's a guy being the provider. There's pressure there.
Sure.
And in the US, I was on a work visa, which meant that I just didn't show up for work to work. I showed up for work to stay in the US, which is a very different driver when you wake up in the morning and go to a job that you find dysfunctional, toxic, and just difficult to navigate, because you rock up there every day because it keeps you in the country. So all that to say, and I'm not painting too dismal a picture. I think there's some accuracy there. Anyone who listens to this, who knows my background, may call me out on that, and that's fine. But there was a situation where I got let go from a position in the US, which required me, within a space of a month, possibly, just the time it took to get the paperwork done and severance and whatever to be in place, to find another job. If I didn't find a job in my career, in my industry, in my profession that met the visa requirements, I would have to leave the US. So
Oh.
that's a hole that you find yourself in. I didn't dig it. It was dug for me. I got pushed into it, if you like, in that
And you weren't
metaphor.
digging it. You
and,
weren't digging
and-
it at all.
yeah. So I had to press pause. The first thing I had to do was press pause, because I can go into panic mode, and then panic is the anathema to joy. Because when you're in panic, you can't see joy. You just literally, you don't have that you don't have that filter in place to look for joy.
Right.
So I try to stay out of panic mode, press pause, didn't panic, and then looked around, and then looked at the reality of the things, and then did what I needed to do. And for the next 4 weeks, finding work was my job. And uh, glad to say I found something that not only fit the criteria, but ended up being one of the best companies I'd worked for in my working career.
Wow.
And actually informs a lot of the things I think about, that are models of bringing excellence to teams. So
Oh,
the kudos to that company, and kudos to the founders, and all of that. But to say that's probably a good example, or a topical example. It's not dire like your Lebanese friends in that respect, but it is real. It is real. We have things that really trip us up. It could be a health challenge. It could be a financial work challenge. It could be a family dynamic that kicks in. And is your world blown up? I would say no. If we wake up to face the day, we've already won the day. We woke up.
mhm.
So we have to put it in perspective. Now we've sort of got to do the work to deal with what's in front of us. So that's an example. My daughter said to me, "How did you find a job in 4 weeks?" When I've got friends at school that have been looking for work for 4 months. And I said, "Well, I don't know their situation, so I can't speak to that. All I know is that I was willing to do whatever it took," which is something that, again, our mentor says, "What do you want, and are you willing to do whatever it takes?" And that's not at the expense of other people. Don't do whatever it takes to lord it over someone, ever. You do whatever it takes to better yourself in an ethical and a responsible way. A lot of times we do things at any cost, and that's really too high a price. So all that to say that, I did what I needed to do. I looked for a job locally. It's funny because the job search started, well, I thought, let me stay in my locality. I want to look for a job where I don't have to commute. That would be great. And then I realized that there's nothing in that area. Then the circle got wider and wider. So it became, my region of San Diego, and then it became San Diego city, and then it became San Diego County, and then it became Southern California. And it was like anywhere in the States, because it's the same paperwork to do the visa work. And then it became, well, if I'm gonna be forced to go back to England, maybe there's another state in the US I could move to keep me in the US. And I went, my job search went certainly
Wow.
statewide. I did look outside of the state. So when you think about that, that's again a major,
That's
you
huge.
do whatever, you do the work, is
You
my
do
point.
it.
Unfortunately, I found something that was in California, and it was in San Diego, and kept me sort of close to where I was. But God works when you work.
Oh, well, and you know what? And you also have to, for me, include him in your plans. It's like,
Yeah.
look, he's got a purpose and a plan for your life. So you can be do whatever your happy self wants to do. However, if you're saying, please, asking for things in your prayers, or you're having conversations with God and whatever, and then you think, I'm just going to go this way. And he's like, hey, but wait a minute, your promised land's over here. And what could have taken a 2-week journey, as we know with Moses, took 40 stinking years. Hello. And then how many of our audience that's watching has the same situation? I could have been here 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Okay, I got it now. Now I'm here, and I totally get it. So let me ask you then, so you leave the original reason why you went to California, you go to this other job, which ended up being beautiful and wonderful, and helped to set the tone and foundation for what you're doing now.
Mm.
And then when did you move back to the UK, and how did all that like?
That was that was a situation. That was a filing. It was basically a filing issue with regards to my processing of the green card, and
Oh wow.
it basically overturned all the work we'd been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. I don't want to get into the
Right,
technicalities of green
right.
card processing and immigration. If I don't know how immigration works in the UK, because I've never had to immigrate to the UK, and most Americans won't know what the immigration process is if they're not involved in it in some aspect of either they work in it or they know someone who's dealing with it. So all that to say, there was a filing issue which put me out of status,
Mm.
and the blessing was that the job that I had actually had a UK office, a UK entity. So I was able to stay within the same organization, but work from the UK. So I
Wow.
went back, but stayed with the company, which again was a blessing. You mentioned the 40-year journey for a 2-week trip in terms of the
Moses.
the Moses story. And sometimes the desert route is the way to take, and you just may have to take the desert route to get to a promised place. And that's, it was interesting that the whole journey of finding that job and looking all over the country for a place and then finding something close to me and then loving it, and then having this other curveball thrown in, activating all sorts of panic situations,
Good
and then
job.
having a solution that allowed me to not only move my family and support my family, but also stay within the ecosystem of a great company.
Right.
And yeah, that's the sort of stuff that happens when you take a a perspective on things that allows you to take in the reality and then make the choice from that reality base. And then we know how important it is to celebrate. I've got a sitting and standing desk. I'm standing up for this interview because I want to get in my body, right? I want to have a place to move. And I celebrate by movement. That's why I love dance. You put a song on and I'm in that space. It's just I'm already anchored, activated, and I'm ready to go. And those things those things inform your choices. You make better choices when you've got more resources to choose from.
Yep.
um, and you choose the resources that you can choose from. you
Yeah.
know so that's something that you do behind the scenes. I think of a metaphor of a chef in a kitchen, making the dish and plating the dish for the
Eating.
customer
Yeah.
is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
If your station isn't clean, if your utensils aren't sharp, if you don't have the right temperature to cook things at, if your equipment doesn't work, that plate is never going to go out the way you want it to.
Right. And if your head's not in the game and your heart's not in the game and you don't know the recipe, I mean, there's so many beautiful pieces. And if you didn't buy the ingredients from the right place, because some ingredients are higher quality than the other ones of the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You said something though a minute ago, and I wrote it twice because I don't want to forget this. When you talked about, and good job by the way using activating, I caught that. I was like, ooh,
Mm.
good job. You're already installing it. Impressive. So when you say the word panic, and so I don't know if you heard my arena talk when I talked about the 11th commandment.
Oh,
And the 11th commandment, most people don't know it because we know the top 10 because they're plastered in every Bible in every hotel room
yeah,
and
yeah.
in every Bible across the world. But in the 11th commandment is thou shalt not freak. Because in the day that thou freakest out, thou shalt surely die. And what I say to that is, well, what dies? Your focus, your kindness, your courtesy, your drive, your joy, your peace,
Mm,
all of it's gone when you're panicked. You no
mm,
longer have access to that. It's toast because everything else that's been activated within you to cause that panic then happens. And what's interesting with that is to maintain my joy. What, you know, when I've hardwired myself, neuroencoded myself to joy and gratitude, that doesn't mean I don't get sad. That doesn't mean I don't get upset. It just means I don't get stuck there. And
Yeah.
and I'm so encoded now because it's been a while that I'm used to having just whatever length of time it takes. It's pretty fast, and then then shift, and then it pivots just like a tide. It's just like, okay, we're over here now, and now we're in the joy land, and now we're happy. But I will tell you, one of the things that really helps me is when, and for me, and I'm sure probably for you, it's because we have the driver of the Holy Spirit that can, you know, lead us into all truth, right? But one of the things that really helps me is when things are presented to me, when opportunities, I call them, Vinu and I, another mentor, she's actually my coach as well, and dear friend, like family to me. We've used the word opportunity versus challenge, right? Because it's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to choose. And when things come, I put them through the filters of peace, joy, gratitude. Is this something I'll be grateful for later? Is this something that, right? Is this something that will bring me joy? Do I have a sense of peace from it? Even if, like, let's say it's a presentation, it's for 30,000 people. So I might have a little nervousness, you know, even if there's some kind of this kind of fluttering going on, deep to the core, that peace that passes all understanding. Do I have that? Right. And those are the things that guide me so that I can maintain that joy. Right. I have a sense that you have a similar thing.
Yes, I want to, and it's interesting that the 11th commandment, thou shalt not freak, is great. And as you said it, it made me think. Jesus called on in the Sermon on the Mount not to worry. He said, "Don't worry."
Yep.
And it's interesting. I mean, I use the term panic, and for this audience, I want to make this. I want to make the language, the linguistic distinction between panic and worry. It's almost to me. It's one is acute, and the other one is chronic.
Ooh, that's good.
Panic shows up in the instant, and panic is good. And I say panic is good because it activates. So something's brought into your awareness,
Right.
and like you just said, you know, you can look at it as an opportunity or as a challenge. The activator is a sense of panic. So like you just said, when things go a little bit off or get activated, you make the choice. And that comes down to Covey's work in terms of, he wrote down the word responsibility, the ability to respond. And you're actually using that gap to pause and make a choice.
Yep.
But back to panic and worry. Worry is chronic. And we live in a world where we get activated so much, we have mini panics. And even now there's, you know, it's I guess it's a medical description now of in terms of panic attacks.
Correct.
So if we're constantly attacked by things that panic us, we can easily slide into a chronic condition, which is worry.
Yep.
And I guess the clinical description may be depression or some form of depression on that spectrum. And we are called in the word not to worry. And you go, well, I wasn't worried until you told me not to worry. And then
easy for you to say, but you know, right? Or even something you said earlier, you know, when you said that somebody hasn't eaten for 3 hours and they're starving. Well, I'm with a group of some of our fellow teammates at the Neuroencoding Institute that Myron put together, and Eric and Dr. Michelle Odette Green and Laura Ollinger, and we get to go into a school district and work with the students and the staff and in a different state. And a lot of these children, they're concerned because they're going into the weekend and they at least get to eat twice a day by going to school. right? Or the third world countries where mamas and daddies are digging through whatever they can to find
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
might nourish their family. And
Yeah.
so when you think of panic and worry, and then the worry, and like you said, it's so beautiful that you use the word chronic, because it is, and it's a default, because we know the neurons that fire together wire together. And when you hardwire yourself for that, and it is a and I challenge everybody, whether you're watching this today or in the future, write down, think about what you think about. Write down, because you might think, oh, I never worry. And then if you have more month than money and you have all these other things that happen, then you might be, oh my gosh, I do worry. And it is chronic.
Mm, mm.
So well done.
It's the awareness, and we have metaphors that we can lean on. When we say chronic and acute, we think of medical pain, for example, and that's a very clear delineation between acute and chronic. But it plays out in so many other places, and we know in terms of what it means on a sort of a psychological basis,
Right.
because we are supposed to be activated. We have senses that are supposed to be activated for us to respond to.
Right.
And we're designed that way. Our creator made us that way so that we can be aware of our environment. And being aware of our environment is a beautiful thing. If you've ever
Yes.
seen a sunset, if you've ever seen flowers, or you've seen something that warms your heart, you are being activated. And you thank God for being
Yeah.
able to be activated and
Yeah.
respond to it. A friend of mine just sent me a text saying that she took a picture of a sunset and she loves her phone camera because she can capture the moment. And part of me says, we can get into that thing where we just take a picture for later. And I'm like, I don't want to be that person who takes lots of pictures for some time in the future, which I will never either see the photos again or actually miss moments in the future because I'm looking back at a moment that I captured on my phone. Enjoy the moment. You've been activated to look at a sunset. Look at the sunset. Enjoy it for what it is. All that to say, we are designed to be activated. We then now can choose what that activation means for us.
Yes.
And once we get into that pattern and that habit, we fire and wire ourselves to be in a more joyful predicament. Joy is chronic in the terms that it's long lasting. Happiness is acute. Something can happen to me and I'm going, woohoo, whoa, woe is me, great is me for the moment. And that's happiness. Joy is chronic. Joy is a place where, come what may, if I wake up in the morning and go to bed at night, that was a joyful day. Like you said, there's moments in the day that I could have done without. There's maybe hours in the day I could have done without. But if I wake up in the morning and I go to bed at night, I'm good.
I love that. And so I wrote this down because this would make such a cool t-shirt. Be chronically joyful.
Yes.
Isn't that so cool? I'm like,
yes.
okay, because I'm putting together gear for the Victory Network. And I'm like, okay, I'll have to send you, because you just gave me that idea. I'll have to send you a package of gear, and when you were talking about the sunset and I think of sunrises too, and growing up and being around oceans and beaches and how much I just love, that, or where I live in the Pacific Northwest, and it's beautiful because I walk out and through the trees of all these old pine trees that are older than any human being I know. And I get to see this beautiful sun come through there, and I go out barefoot and it sets my circadian rhythm. I mean, it's just everything that happens, right? And I'm so joy filled with that, and joyful. And I say FULL full. But when you were talking about the panic and the things, I've reworded some of that for myself as, and we use the word activated, which I will now use because I love that. And thank you. The other thing though, is that I use it. It's just feedback. It's just feedback. It's just giving me feedback that I've walked into a room that I need to pay attention to who's in the room with me, that I've because that, there are times where you are going to know, your unconscious knows, God's going to tell you, hey, get out of there, right?
Yeah.
And then there's and it may not be because you're going to have a dangerous thing happen. It might be that it might take you on a detour. You might hook up with somebody and have a great conversation, and whether it's relationship or business or something else, and it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it wasn't really your best path, right? And sometimes people think in terms of good or bad, best, whatever, and maybe it's just frequency. If I'm in this frequency, I will sustain the most joy, and I will be able to give the most joy. I will sustain and bring to me the most love, and I will be able to give the most love. I'll be able to deepen my capacity to love. So therefore, when I walk into a place, then it's we go for guts. I mean, it's like, right? Like, come on, here we go. Right? Well, we have just a few minutes before Eduardo gives us the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
And I want to talk about your group. You have this Facebook group, and you and I have been. I'm so grateful that we're doing this together in the Catapult. There he goes, 3 minutes. So hurry, tell everybody about the Facebook group and where they can find you and all of that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to segue a little bit, and I'm going to work within the 3 minutes. You mentioned that journey in terms of chronically joyful, and as you were talking, a character in the Bible stood out to me, and he is my go-to guy. Anyone who knows me and talks to me about in that space knows that Nehemiah is my guy.
I love it.
He is the manager who led. He typifies the need to focus on what's important over the minutia of distraction. And read his story. It reads like a great story. I mean, you don't have to be faith-based to read the book of Nehemiah. It's a great story of overcoming. The Managers Who Lead is the place to find me. themanagerswholead.com will get you to a landing page to the site. I also am very active on LinkedIn, because that's a space where a lot of the corporate business type leaders and managers live. But at the same time, this is not something for the boss or the manager as much as it is for the person who's developing an understanding of how to manage and lead themselves, because that's where it all starts. Join me on any of those platforms, and would love to have a conversation and an interview. I'm talking to people who are just sharing great stories and things that can really resonate with the audience. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being here today. I'm so grateful. And those of you who know, you can find me also in my new Facebook group, The Victory Network. I would love for you to join me there. If you want to be interviewed, let me know. It leads into being interviewed here as well. Find me there. And I also want to just really speak into, what do you have to believe to create victory in your life? What do you have to believe? And really think into that this week as you go through your day and through the weekend. And once again, I want to thank my good friend, Steve Wright. The more that we spend time together, the more it's just like, this is so fun. And I'm so grateful that we have the synergies too with our faith and that I believe in divine appointments, and this surely felt like that to me. And I want to thank all of you for being a part here with the Spanglish World Network, and you can find us on spanglishworld.ca for all of your needs. Live it, breathe it, enjoy it, be it, and thank you.